Right, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. It's very late evening. Well, it's 11:30. But this is another very helpful video listening to Sir Bill Cash, and he's being interviewed. This will add to your understanding of really what is going on.
He's one of the most celebrated historically, arguably, Brexiteers, who is also a Tory, Bill Cash. Bill, so why did it take so long?
Well, because they didn't want it to happen, but they didn't realise it had to happen.
Who's they?
They are the establishment here in the United Kingdom, as well as in the European Union. When I wrote a book, when I led the rebellion against the Maastricht Treaty, it was called Against the Federal Europe. And in there I said that I predicted that there would be, if the Maastricht Treaty went through, it wouldn't only be European government, it would be effectively a German Europe, that it would also be accompanied eventually by protests and riots, massive unemployment, waves of immigration from Central and Eastern Europe, a recession, and the rise of the far right. Now, I think I can say that what I said in 1993 and 1992 has happened, because that is where we are.
Yep.
I've now written another book, which is called From Brussels with Love, and it went to the top of Amazon in one day.
Okay, that's enough promotion, but very quickly.
Because I'm giving the proceeds to Help for Heroes. And the point about it is I'm not doing this for financial gain, I'm doing it because I want to tell people how things can be done. And that is part of where we are now.
Okay, but are you surprised that it was the working classes of England in this very high turnout that did it, not the Tories?
No, absolutely not at all. But you see, it was actually a mixture, because we are not specifically a group of people who are identified by specific characteristics. We are people who believe in the United Kingdom, we believe in self-government, we believe in the fact that people have to govern themselves in a democracy. The trouble with the European Union is it is not a democracy in any sense that we recognise. It has become completely opaque. The decision-making process leads to nothing more or less than compromises all the time, and it imposes laws on us that we don't want.
You think US presidential intervention did help or harm to your cause?
Well, I think there are many interventions that have taken place that have harmed the cause. I mean, this Armageddon talk, scaremongering. British people don't like being threatened, and don't forget we've saved Europe twice in the last 100 years. And all the people who are doing the scaremongering have actually also been the people who got it wrong on the euro, wrong on the exchange rate mechanism, and in fact have absolutely no credentials whatever, apart from the fact that they keep on telling everybody what to do.
Is it the end of TTIP, the trade deal between Europe and the United States?
I couldn't argue, I couldn't say that. All I do know is that TTIP has got real problems, and it's got to get the consent of all 28 member states, and there are quite a few member states who wouldn't want it.
I spoke to Douglas Carswell, the UKIP MP, who obviously was very happy, saying that this isn't the end of UKIP, but maybe a different sort of New England party on the right. What do you think of that?
Well, I really don't know at all. We've got the Conservative Party, and if we manage to sort things out in the Conservative Party, we will be able to continue to play the role as a party which, in the words of Disraeli, that famous English Prime Minister of the 19th century, the Tory party is a national party, or it is nothing.
Well, you said you weren't surprised. What about the fact that Chancellor George Osborne said there were no economic plans in place?
I will leave it there. Now, important to bring it up the books that he wrote. The first one, when he was saying when he led the rebellion against the Maastricht Treaty, and that was called Against a Federal Europe. And the one he's just written is From Brussels with Love. And I do suggest, if you're able to, is to get your hands on those books. I certainly will do, and read them, because the more one can actually really fully understand the machinations of what happened prior to 1972 and 1973, when all this was going on and people were being hoodwinked, then, and also now, of what really is going on. So I'll put the links of the books in the description box. Now, this is various takes of Sir Bill Cash and Lord Adonis in Sky News, and I'm just really taking the Bill Cash ones.
Momentum is taking us towards a second referendum, is what Lord Adonis says.
Well, I'm not entirely sure that he has much democratic legitimacy, but let's get that one out of the way. Look, basically, the Referendum Act, which was passed, which enabled the British people to be able to vote on the question of leave or remain, was passed by a majority of 6-1 in the House of Commons. That was a sovereign act of Parliament which authorised the referendum and deliberately gave the decision to the British people. The Remainers have never given up, despite the fact that they did lose by a significant majority in the vote itself, and they have, in certain cases, in many cases,
Oopsie-daisy,
in the Conservative Party, let alone in the Labour Party, have reversed their decisions taken not only on the Referendum Act and giving it to the people, so that they now say they can reclaim it, which I said yesterday is complete rubbish. The second thing is that they got the notification of Withdrawal Act 499 to 120, and then the Withdrawal Act itself, which on third reading even Kenneth Clarke voted for. So they're reversing those. This is a dreadful exercise of indicative votes that's going on at the moment, and one of them is the referendum. It wasn't only defeated last night, but it was defeated a few days ago when Sarah Wollaston put it up, and it only got 85 votes in the House of Commons.
Oh,
it's just
okay.
It's just a completely incredible.
Okay, if there is not sure. If there is
right, I just want to point out that this is from Brexit Central, and it was published on March the 28th. Yes, 2019. So I want to go on. Well, he just gets a last.
There is a third meaningful vote. I'm not quite sure how that can happen, given that the Speaker said that's not possible, but let's wait and see. If there is, which way will you vote?
Oh, I'm definitely voting against the withdrawal agreement. I've set out my case in the House of Commons and in articles I've written in Telegraph and all sorts of newspapers, and I've said it many times, and why. Very simply, the backstop completely undermines the constitutional status of Northern Ireland, which is why the DUP are not prepared to accept the withdrawal agreement either. But on top of that, there is an issue of control over laws. The Prime Minister quite clearly stated at Lancaster House, and she was right at that time, saying that we will never truly leave the European Union unless we regain control of our laws. I'm chairman of the European Scrutiny Committee. All the laws that come out of the European Union pass through our hands. And basically, Article 4 of this withdrawal agreement enables in fact directs that, under that withdrawal agreement, laws which are made in the Council of Ministers, behind closed doors, without a transcript, by a qualified majority voting of 27 other countries, with us not there, will, in fact, and by accelerated procedures in some cases, which could be very, very damaging to the United Kingdom, they go through, and that is a complete loss of control over laws. One last thing, okay, on that, if I may. It is the fact that there are procedures which can accelerate the passage of those laws. There is a myth around that it all takes about 5 years for these laws to go through. I've got 200 uncleared documents at the moment because in the national interest these have been held back for a variety of reasons and they are still in the pipeline. The reality is that these laws which they'll bring in, and Germany and France will dominate already. They call the shots in the European Union, and those laws will put us at the mercy of our competitors. And I don't think British business has woken up to that, and they should have done, because it's been said many times by me. Yes, well, shortly, there are very, very good reasons for leaving the European Union. As you know, I've campaigned upon this for 2 decades and more. And the reason for it is that we ought to be able to run our own affairs in our own country in accordance with the wishes of our own people in general elections. It's a simple principle. Lord Adonis, who is in the House of Lords and therefore, as I said, doesn't have much democratic legitimacy, actually forgets when he says we are on the right of the party. Actually, that's rubbish. What we are is Democrats supporting the vote of the British people and supporting the acts of Parliament which led to the referendum and the Withdrawal Act of 2018, which repeals the European Communities Act and all the laws and treaties as the British people instructed. And the bottom line is that that is something to fight for, because this is about democracy, it's about integrity, it's about fighting for principle. These may sound like high-flown words, but they are have real meaning, and people fought and died for these principles, and I don't think we have any right at all just to let Parliament run amok over this. And this indicative vote thing that's going on at the moment, as I said yesterday, is like a bag of licorice all sorts. I mean,
and I think also the standard that has dropped in Parliament because of it seemed to be a swathe of young women getting in. Now, I'm not particularly expressing any particular names other than, of course, Yvette Cooper, and bringing up that shocking bill or proposal. They have been indoctrinated, so they're coming from a very different situation. They've not been in wars, which I have, and I was one of the war babies in the Second World War, so we'll carry on with this.
Nobody really knows which way it will go, because they keep on forming themselves into different factions, and it's like Welts running a Welts stall.
I would say that actually they really lack integrity.
Under the Lisbon Treaty Act, which was passed on that, it's simply this. Kay, is that all right?
Yes, absolutely.
I'd just like to say this. Under the Lisbon Treaty Act, which was passed in, I think, 2008, the Article 50 arrangements were put in place by our own domestic law. It's not just a matter of having it imposed upon us by the EU. We actually voted for that. I happened to vote against it. In fact, funnily enough, the Conservative Party did as well. But the actual question of this so-called no deal issue is not the way it's put is as if somehow it's been created by members of Parliament. In its own right, it was actually implicit in the fact that under the Article 50 arrangements, within your own constitutional requirements, if the Lisbon Treaty Act is looked at, what it says is that after 2 years, unless there is an extension, which is now obviously taking place under the arrangements that were voted through last night, the repeal of the 72 Act ceases, and that 2-year deadline is set by the very legislation I've just referred to and European law.
Okay.
So it's not as if we're aiming at a no deal, it's that is the timeline that's been laid down by the enactment itself, which, by the way, Adonis voted for.
Okay, Lord Adonis, it's written down. There it is. Those are the rules.
This is Catania Alvin. Hope that you found this interesting. Different aspects of what Bill Cash, great wisdom he has to say. So God bless, stay well, and we're rising up, people. I'm sure this will be done. God bless. Catania Alvin signing out. Bye-bye.